Okay, so at this point we have a project created, and we're going to go through the MNIST dataset example, where we're going to create a notebook. So there are some prerequisites. You have to have a deep learning project already created. We went through that in the last step. Um, and so you have this link. We're going to go through step one, where we're actually going to download this data and put it in our local, and then we're going to upload it to our Cloud Object Store. So to download it, you click on this link. You will get to this page, and you need to download these three files locally. And depending on what browser you're using, it could change the name of these and uncompress them. We want them in this same format. So when you save them locally, just make sure they have the exact same names and they're not compressed. Okay? So going back to our step-by-step here, after you download it, you want to open the Cloud Object Store GUI. And to do that, you would click on this link here as indicated by the steps. You want the services expanded, and you want to click on data services. And once you do that, you'll get this user interface, which is, this is our Cloud Object Store instance that we created before. If you click on that, it actually forces you to log in. So once you're logged in, it'll put you at the Cloud Object Store GUI. We're going to create a couple of buckets, one for the actual data, and then the other one for the training results. All right, so I already have created those, and I actually have been using them, and I'll show you what those look like. So I created two buckets, and I used the actual resource group name, tech together-test data, and tech together-test training. So I've already been through this exercise, and I actually have uploaded the data. So if I click on here, you're going to see there's three files. I'm just going to go ahead and actually delete them so I can show you how to do that. So I deleted those files, and I'm going to delete the bucket as well and recreate it. So if I go back to buckets here, so this is the data one. I'm going to just click on delete, and it's going to go ahead and delete that bucket. Okay, so now I'm going to recreate it. So create bucket, and this is how we create it. Give it the same name. I'm going to put it in the US South to be consistent. It's going to be regional, and everything else is the same as the default. Okay, so when I create, well, it says that it's still thinking that name exists, so I'm just going to change the name of it here. I'm going to call it data 2. Okay, and I'm going to head and create. But in your example, you can use just data. All right, so I'm back here, and I want to upload those files. I can click on this button here, or if I have, and I'm on the Mac, the Finder open, I can just move it, these files over, drag and drop, put them right in there. Try that again. So it takes a few seconds to go through each one, depending on how busy the network is. All right, so now we have our data sets in here. Okay, so going back to the buckets, since I had run this training before, I have a number of files in there. I'm just going to clear these out as well, and then you'll know how to do that in the future. So I'm just going to select all of them here, and then I'm going to do delete objects. So now I have an empty bucket for the training. Okay. All right, so now at this point, we want to go back to Watson Studio. So you can go back to home here. Here's our project. We can go ahead and open that up again. And now we're, actually I forgot to do one thing. I need to go back. So as part of this step, we needed to create a credential. And back at the Cloud Object Store UI, you would click on Service Credentials. And I already have a credential, but I'll show you how to create a new one. Simply click on here. You can go with the default name. You can leave writer. You can select auto-generate service ID. And then you want to include this HMAC credential, which sets this automatically to true, just like the instructions tell you in step number 3. So then you click on add, and it actually creates those credentials. I'm not going to do it because I already have it. So once it creates the credentials, you'll see this. And what you're going to need is the access key ID and the access on the secret access. So these two here. And you're also going to need the endpoint. The endpoint, as I'll show you when we're building a notebook, is derived from one of these here. So we want regional, and we want US South. So the endpoint is going to be this guy, and I'll point that out as we're building our notebook. Okay, so now back to Watson Studio. So the instructions here go through the process of doing add to project. So you would click on here, and you would click on notebook, and we're going to go through that. But before going through that, I want to show you what I have already created. So I have gone through this exercise and actually went through the example. And so once you create the notebook, it's going to be listed under your assets. And so I created this notebook earlier. And so if I open this up, this is what the notebook looks like. And so what I did is I copied the text. So in step number 2, where it says install required library, and I created text nodes to copy that text into the notebook. And then I created a code node to actually move the actual Python code over. So to see this in action, I'm going to put this in edit mode, and it's going to actually launch my environment. And so here's a text node, here's a code node, and I can change this now if I wanted to, so I can type in stuff in here. But I'm not going to go through that. But here's the actual text node, and I'll show you how to do this. So I was able to go through all these steps and copy those the actual documentation for each step, so that when I come back later, I can go and read the actual instructions and then execute each one of these, which I'll take you through later. For now, I'm going to go back to our example, and I'm going to show you how to create a new notebook. So from here, we're going to do add to project, and we're going to select notebook. And for the name, I'm just going to do the MNIST example notebook 2. And so we're gonna leave the environment at the default, which is 2 virtual CPUs, 8 gig of RAM, and Python 3, right? So you can create this notebook. Once created, it puts us here. So it automatically created a note for us. We don't want that, well, at least I didn't want that. You can choose differently. I wanted to make that a markdown where I can actually enter in text. And so what I did is I went through these steps and I copied it from here. And I said, okay, I'm going to copy that so I have this for later. I'll put that text in there. And then I click on this plus to actually add a new node. And then I copy the actual Python code. Go in here, and then I click on new node. I made it a markdown, and I said download, copy this description here of what this code is actually doing. Right, so then I go through all the steps in copying the documentation and the actual source code until I get all the way to the end. Okay, now there's a couple things that as you go through here, such as in example number 3, you're going to need the username and password and instance ID for the Watson machine learning client. Okay, so I'm just going to save this for now, and I'm going to show you how to go back. And so if you go back to the Cloud Object Store UI where we were, you can click on this menu here, and you can go back to the dashboard. And on this dashboard, let's see, that's not the dashboard I wanted. There we go. If you go back to the dashboard here, actually, if you go back to this, and all right, so if the URL here should be console.bluemix.net, and it'll get you to that same dashboard. So what we want is the Watson machine learning instance that was created as part of creating a deep learning project, which is this guy here, PM20DSX, right? So if we click on this, this is the Watson machine learning service that was provisioned, and what we need are the service credentials. So these are the username down here, and then the password right here, and then the instance ID, which is this guy right here. All right, the URL you already have, so we just need the instance ID, the password, and then the username. You're going to have to copy those over once you get to this step in number 2. Okay. When you get to step 3, you're going to change this particular star and put your email there. Same for step number 4. You're going to put your email here. And now this other stuff we need to get from the Cloud Object Store. Again, if we go back to our dashboard here, and go to the Cloud Object Store instance, which is this guy, the credentials we created before. So if you go back to the credentials section, so the access key and the secret access key is what you're going to plug in to these 2 parameters here. The endpoint URL is going to be https:// And then if you come to the endpoint here, we did this before. We selected regional, we selected US South. So it's going to be https:// and then this host name. Okay, and it's going to be the same for this bottom part here too. Now the bucket name we need to put in as well. So we created 2 buckets, right? So if we go back to buckets, so this first one is the bucket name, which is the data one. In my case, it's data 2. And then the other bucket name for the training results, I call it test training. And so you would plug the bucket name there as well. Okay? So you go through adding these items all the way down until you get to the bottom. Okay? And then if we go back to our Watson Studio, here's this notebook. I saved it, and I'm going to get out of it. Let's see. All right, so I'm back to my project. I got out of my project. If I go back to assets, so I have the 2 notebooks, but I'm going to go back to my original one. And now I can show you in more detail. So here's my information with everything plugged in, including the Watson machine learning instance, the cloud object store information, the buckets. I'm going to change that to button. So I got to go to edit. So I got to change that bucket to have a number 2 there. And then I'm going to save that. Right, so I have it all the way down to the end. Okay. All right, so now I'm actually going to show you how I actually run this. Okay. So you select the cell and you simply click on run, and when it's running, there's going to be a star in this bracket. When it's done running, it's going to have the step number. So if I click run, star, and then it completed, and that's the step number. Now it's set 24 because I have run this many times. In your case, that would be step 1, the first time you go through it. So it ran it, that was the result. I'm going to go to the next code cell, and I'm going to click run, and it completed. There was no output for that one. I'm going to go over here and do the actual pip install of Watson Machine Learning. Run. Now you're going to see a lot of output. This is all okay, and it's expected. Now I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to click run, and it completed. I'm going to go to the metadata and run that one. And it completed. It gave me a definition UID. I'm going to go to the next one, click run. It completed. Go to the next one. Now this is where we're actually going to launch the job. So it's going to return with a UID. So go ahead and click the run. And it's still running. And now it's completed. So it gave me a run UID. And now we're going to monitor it. And this is where we may stay here for a while. So I'm selecting this cell. I'm going to click on run. Initially it's going to be in pending. I'm going to keep staying here. Eventually it's going to start running, and it'll be running for a while. But I'm just going to wait a moment, and I'll speed this up, so you don't have to wait through the video. But as you go through it, just keep in mind this is going to take a while. Usually within a minute before it starts to run, but it'll run for a while afterwards. Okay, so now it's actually running. And we're going to monitor it until it's actually completed. Okay, it's completed. So now that it's completed, we can continue. So the next step is to actually deploy the trained model. Okay, so we go through this step, we run that, and that's completed. Still running, still has the star there. That's completed. So this case, it failed because let's try this again. Oh, well, this time it worked. So if you get an error like that, if you retry it, it should work. All right, so we got it deployed, and now we're going to test the model. So we're going to go through these steps. Download the sample images, load the contents, and actually to go ahead and see if you can classify. And here's the result. We fed it a 5 and 4, and the results should be 5 and 4, so that's right. So there you go. So now we have completed this notebook. You went through all the steps. We trained it. We deployed a train model, and then we tested it by using the digits number 5 and 4. We went through the inference, and it came back with values 5 and 4. So all good. And that covers this tutorial. So I'm going to save the notebook, And then I can go back to my project, and there you go.